Hi, gang. It's me again. I don't know if you're tired of seeing me, but I'm here again. We are going to do some readings for you. Welcome to the BSB Bookathon. This is the winter edition. We're so happy that you're here on this Friday night. I don't know what your weather's like, but mine is cold and I have no snow. I'm in upstate New York, zero snow. Couple things to let you know. We've got a chat bar if you want to talk to each other or, be casual about chit-chatting and commenting on readings and questions. There's also a Q&A box at the bottom. So if you have questions you want to direct to a specific author or something you are curious about a certain reading, then put your questions there and I will make sure that I monitor those for you. We've also got a special. We're running a 50% sale on Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern time on various ebook titles for the participating authors, and we will post a link for you in the chat bar, so keep your eyes open for that. I have with me today Joy Argento and Sandy Lowe and David Peterson, and I'm going to let each of you, when you read, I'm going to let you tell a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, who you are, what you're writing, and then what you're reading from. And I think that Joy does not want to go first, so I'm going to make David go first.
This time I don't care.
David, tell us a little bit about yourself and your reading, and then you go right ahead whenever you're ready, sir.
Sure. Thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction. I'm David Peterson. I am the author of the Heath Barrington murder mystery series, of which 5 have already been published. I live with my husband and 2 kitty cats, plus 1 outside cat who seems to have adopted us in the beautiful Southwest Arizona. And I'm going to be reading tonight a selection from Death's Prelude. And that is the 6th book in the series. Did I get my fingers right? 6th book in the series. It's a prequel to the previous 5 books, and it's set in 1937. So the other books were always in 1947. So this is 10 years before that. And it's coming out next month. It'll make a great Valentine's Day gift. That was supposed to be a heart. The lead character, Heath Barrington, is fresh out of college, and his wealthy Aunt Verbena is taking him on the almost new Queen Mary from New York to Southampton and then on to London for a vacation. In the section I'm going to read, Heath and his aunt have just left the sun deck, having thrown their streamers and blown their horns at the Queen Mary as she left her dock in the Hudson River, and they're heading down the stairs to have lunch in the dining room of the Queen Mary when they run into Myrtle Obermeyer, an old friend of Verbena's. And here's the scene. On our way down to the dining room, we ran almost literally into a woman about my aunt's age who was coming up the stairs. She was swathed in purple with a deep purple hat which sported a white plume. She was wearing short white gloves, a fox stole draped about her shoulders, and an alligator clutch tucked under her left arm, which went with her alligator high-heel shoes. "Why, Verbena!" the woman exclaimed as we all stopped on the landing and stared at each other. "Myrtle Obermeyer, what a surprise. I don't think I've seen you since you moved to Chicago." "Goodness, has it been that long? I've been in Chicago almost 2 years," Mrs. Obermeyer said. "What are you doing on this ship? My gracious, oh, and is this your new husband? I'd heard you remarried. My, he's quite handsome, tall and young too." I blushed crimson and Verbena looked aghast. "Myrtle, for heaven's sake, this is my nephew Heath, my sister's only child. My new husband is much older and he couldn't come with us because of some silly work situation. I'm treating Heath to this trip. He's just graduated from college, you know." She looked me up and down from head to toe. "Oh, how nice. Congratulations. Aren't you going to introduce us, Verbena?" "Oh, of course, forgive me. Myrtle Obermeyer, I'd like you to meet my nephew, Heath Barrington. Heath, this is an old friend of mine, Myrtle Obermeyer, Mrs. Maxwell Obermeyer." "Careful on the olds, dear. I'm younger than you are, remember. As you always remind me, Myrtle, but only by 5 months. 5 months and 6 days. Yes, that means your birthday is this month." "That's right, September the 30th. I'm a Libra, you know. Libras are known for being charming, graceful, and good humorous, but not modest, obviously. Oh, so witty. You're a Taurus, of course, Verbena, known for their stubbornness, hedonism, and a love of luxury and comfort. Quite spot on, I'd say. I had no idea you were such an astrology expert, Melito. Oh, I had a few encounters with a handsome medium named Omar last year. I treated myself for my 39th birthday. You treated yourself to Omar? Of course, darling. He also reads palms, you know. He told me I have one of the most fascinating love lines he's ever seen. Very long. On that, I have no doubt. Sounds like it was a birthday gift that kept on giving. And now you turn 40 on the 30th. I'm still 39, dear. For 3 more weeks, Myrtle. Just 3 more weeks. Yes, but you've been 40 for nearly 5 months. How's it been being in your 40s, Verbena? Oh, you'll find out soon enough. Oh, I do hope you'll get me a birthday present. Something tall, well-built and handsome, just like this fellow here. How do you do, Mr. Barrington? She held out her gloved right hand, palm down. I wasn't exactly sure if I should kiss it like I'd seen in the movies or just take it in mine and gently shake it. I decided on the latter. How do you do, Mrs. Obermeyer? Oh, quite well, she said, withdrawing her hand. I'm a widow, dear man, traveling alone. I didn't even bring my maid. Poor Maxwell, he's been gone several years now. I forget how many. She looked me up and down again. Are you single? Myrtle, he's 22 years old. She smiled. Oh, that's old enough. And then some. In your mind, perhaps. What are you doing here, anyway? Me? Well, I was on my way up to the sun deck to see us off, but I'm afraid I'm too late. I waited forever for one of the lifts, then finally decided to take the stairs. Yes, we're well underway now, though not in open water yet, I said. She shook her head, the white plume in her hat waving back and forth. Such is life. My fault entirely. I took too long with the bottle of bubbly Frederick brought me as a bon voyage gift. Actually, I took too long with Frederick, too. She giggled at that, covering her mouth with her hand. He was the last visitor off, I believe. Had we dillied and dallied any longer, he would have wound up sailing with us. Frederick, Verbena said. Frederick Henry Hamilton, a dear pet. I met him at the Stork Club last week when I got to New York. He's simply charming and a divine dancer, among other things. He hated to see me sail. He was being beside himself and he begged me to stay. Why didn't you? Because when we first met, he told me he was in banking. Turns out he's just a teller and rather witless. Still, we had fun, and he saw me off with a bottle of Veuve, which probably cost him a week's salary. I promised him I'd write. Which you won't, Verbena said. Oh, I may, but then again, you're right. I may not. Why keep his hopes alive? You haven't changed, Myrtle, so where are you headed, besides Hades eventually? She gave a false laugh. Oh, Verbena, you haven't changed a bit either, I see, except older. Still so witty. I'm on my way to Cherbourg to see my cousin, Mrs. Arthur Van Allen. I wasn't aware you had a cousin in Cherbourg. Oh, they're from New York originally. She and her husband live in Marseille, but they're meeting me in Cherbourg. I'll be stopping in Paris for a week on my way. So many Frenchmen there, you know. Le ciel en français, Verbena said. Don't speak French, Verbena. I can't understand a word, Mrs. Obermeyer said. It means, heaven help the Frenchman, I said, suppressing a smile. And if you can't speak French, Verbena, if you can't speak French, Myrtle, how are you going to manage in Paris and Marseille, Verbena said. That is the native language, you know. Oh, my dear, I always manage, don't you worry. There are other ways to communicate. Yes, and you're fluent in all of them, Verbena said. And that's it. Read the rest for what happens next.
That was amazing. I've decided that the rest of us are not going to read because nobody wants to follow that. So we're just all going to sit here and look pretty.
I would like to send my reading to David, please.
Yes, let's do that. Because you can
Thank
do
you.
voices and you'll figure it out. It's fine. You do it. You do
Yeah.
it. That was incredible.
Thank you.
All right, Joy, let's move on to you. Give us a little intro about yourself and then tell us what you're going to read for us, and then go ahead and read. And I'm going to
I'm an artist as well as an author. So the book I'm reading from today is Carrie and Hope. I don't have a copy yet. And one of the main characters is also an artist, so I play off of that. I live in Rochester, the same place Georgia lives. So yay, no snow yet. Very little snow. That's enough about me. This is coming out with Bold Strokes February 1st, and then I think on the 9th, the rest of the world. So the scene takes place in a bar. The main characters, Carrie and Hope, are both in their mid-30s, and they met at a support group for grief. And they both left, and I think we just lost Sandy. They left because neither one of them felt like they belonged there. So they've had a little bit of a conversation in this bar so far. So the conversation picks up from where I'm gonna start here. Carrie broke the silence. So you have a son? Hope swelled with pride. Yes, Derek's 19 now. He goes to college in Buffalo, probably going into business like his father. He's a good kid. I'm very proud of him. It shows. Carrie tucked a strand of dark blonde hair behind her ear. He's the kind of kid who never causes too much trouble. You know? Well, if we don't count the 3 years he was in middle school and his first 2 years of high school. Hope let out a small laugh. But I hear that happens a lot. Luckily, he seemed to come to his senses when he was a junior. I'm pretty sure I heard an actual pop one day when his head came out of his ass. Not that it doesn't go back in every once in a while. Carrie, who had just taken a drink of her juice, sputtered, mouthful of liquid. She managed to swallow it without spewing it across the bar and wiped a drip that escaped down her chin. Sorry, Hope said, amused. I didn't mean to make you choke. She let out her own wave of laughter. Carrie smiled at her. Yeah, I can tell by your laugh just how sorry you are. She shook her head. I really am sorry, Hope said when she finally got the laughing under control. Oh my God, I haven't laughed like that in a long time. You should do it more often, Carrie told her. It looks good on you. Thanks, Hope said. Okay, enough about me. Let's talk about you. Married? Boyfriend? Kids? The bartender set a fresh bowl of pretzels in front of them. Hope reached for a handful and pushed the bowl closer to Carrie. Carrie shook her head at the silent offer. None of the above. Never? Hope asked between bites. Well, I've had boyfriends when I was younger, if that's what you're asking, and no current boyfriend. I did, however, break up with my last girlfriend a little over 3 years ago. Been single since. Girlfriend, huh? Okay, she hadn't pegged Carrie as being a lesbian, not that it mattered. How come someone as stunning as you doesn't have someone special in your life, Hope said. Sorry, that didn't sound quite right. But Carrie was stunning. Dark blonde hair that hung just below her shoulders, deep green eyes, and the slightest cleft in her chin added up to a very attractive woman. Hope imagined there would be a lot of people, men and women, who would be vying for her attention. Carrie shrugged. I just can't seem to meet a woman who holds my interest for more than a couple of dates, and some for not even that long. My love life is a sad, sad thing. She shook her head, but grinned at Hope. It's okay. It gets lonely sometimes, but I'm happy with my life for the most part. I certainly don't need someone to make me happy. Carrie seemed to think for a moment. Her face betrayed her regret at her choice of words. I'm sorry, she said. That was insensitive of me, considering everything you've been through. Stop. I didn't take it personally. I don't want you to have to watch every word you say. So what do you do for a living? Hope asked her. I'm a logistics manager at Frederick's company, in charge of the warehouse inventory, transportation, some customer service. I know it sounds glamorous, but not so much. Are you trying to tell me that you don't get to wear an evening gown to work with 3-inch heels and a tiara every day? Oh, well, yeah, I do. So if you count that, then I guess it's pretty darn glamorous. Carrie laughed at her own joke. Hope found it endearing. Doesn't your evening gown get dirty in the warehouse? Not really. There's 3 guys whose only job it is to carry me around and keep me away from the dirt. Sounds like a dream job. Hope was enjoying the evening much more than she ever thought she would when she begrudgingly got ready for the grief support group. Actually, it is a pretty good job. I've been with the company for 12 years. The benefits are good, and I've got about 1 million days of vacation built up. 1 million, huh? That's a lot. Do you get that every year? Hope sipped her drink and relaxed into the conversation. No, I get 4 weeks a year because I've been there so long, but I haven't taken much of it, so it just accumulates. You don't ever take vacations? Not usually. I don't feel like going anywhere alone. I do too much alone. I have friends, but most of them have significant others or families. I used to take my grandmother to North Carolina every year to visit my brother, but it got hard for her to travel, so we haven't gone in a while. What do you do when you aren't working or visiting your grandmother? Hope asked. I paint, Carrie said. I love creating art. Hope leaned forward. What kind of painting? I oil paint, still lifes mostly, but I occasionally do portraits or figure paintings. In fact, I've been working on a series of rough sketches for a show in New York City in December. I just need to find a model. She stopped and looked at Hope. Hope raised her eyebrows, waiting for Carrie to finish. What? Carrie cleared her throat. I was saying I need a model to use for a set of paintings for this show in New York City, and I was just deciding if I had enough nerve to ask you if you would consider posing for me. And what did you decide? Do you have enough nerve? Hope teased her. No, probably not. I don't want you to think I'm some sort of weirdo asking you to pose for me when you don't even know me. Who says I don't already think you're a weirdo? Hope fought the urge to laugh. Well, in that case, what do I have to lose? Would you consider posing for me? I would pay you, of course. You wouldn't get rich, but I could give you something for your time. Hope was quiet as she gave it a moment of serious consideration. Have you ever modeled before? I mean, have you ever done modeling for art, for an artist? Carrie seemed to be stumbling over her words. It was charming. Actually, I did some modeling for art classes in college, but I was young and beautiful then. She smiled. Now I'm old and wrinkly with stretch marks. I'm not sure I would be what you're looking for. Carrie smiled back. You are very far from old and wrinkly, and a few stretch marks won't hold me back. Are we talking about posing in the nude? Hope realized that should have been her first question. Actually, we're talking about posing with a narrow strip of cloth draped around you, covering your, Carrie hesitated, female parts? So I guess the answer would be yes and no. You would need to be nude under the material, but it would cover your womanly part, so to speak. I'm sorry, this is probably pretty weird having a stranger ask you this. No, not at all. Strangers ask me to get naked all the time, and some are even willing to pay me for it. Hope popped another pretzel in her mouth. You're just a smart ass, aren't you? Pretty much, Hope grinned, but I will consider posing for you. How's that? That would be great. Think about it and let me know. Carrie pulled her phone from her pocket, opened it to new contacts, and slid it across the bar to Hope. Hope typed her number in and slid it back. It took Carrie only a few seconds to send a quick text. There you go. Now you have my number. Hope smiled when she heard the text tone from her phone in her purse. She didn't really need the extra money. Tom had left her very comfortable, but maybe she could pose and make a new friend. And if there was one thing in her life she needed right now, it was a friend.
Awesome.
Very nice.
Loved it.
Good job.
Hey, I forgot to mention that when somebody's reading, maybe the rest of us can mute our microphones just to be safe in case, like I just had a couple of sneezes here. So I was very glad I was muted. Yeah, that was awesome. That was from Carrie and Hope, which comes out when, Joy?
February 1st with bold strokes, and I think the 9th everywhere else of February.
Okay. Awesome. Sandy Lowe. Now there's a different background. What are you doing?
Oh, okay. I've told everyone. Thank you, Georgia. Thank you for that segue.
Yes.
I am sitting on the floor of the bathroom in the Bold Strokes Books office because, believe it or not, this room has the best light, which goes to show you how bad the light is in the rest of the office. And the only reason this room has good light is because I forced Rad to change the light bulb because this is the room I put on makeup in. and the mood lighting was not working for me. It gets dark here in upstate New York at like 5 o'clock. So yeah, it's slowly getting later, hopefully. So anyhow, my dog is on the other side of this door. That's why I disappeared for a minute. So you may hear the dulcet tones of a puppy who's very upset that she's literally 6 inches from me on the other side of this door. Okay, my book is If You Dare. It's an erotic romance. It came out in December. I am going to read a scene that occurs between the two protagonists, Lauren and Emma. And the day previous, Lauren was in a bar with her best friend, and her friend dared her to sleep with the next woman who walked through the door. And that woman, of course, happened to be Emma, because this is a romance novel and those things happen in a romance novel. But Lauren was unsuccessful in her attempt. And to make matters worse, Emma finds out that she's been the subject of this dare. So this scene occurs the next day when Lauren has a lot of making up to do. I'm really sorry I hurt you. I mean it when I say I want you, Lauren said. Emma nodded. I believe you, and yet I don't believe you. That's not your fault. That's me and my fucked up past. I hardly even know you. I just know what I feel. And I know that when I want someone, I usually end up regretting it. Do you want me? Lauren asked. Of course, Lauren had zeroed in on the one thing that Emma hadn't meant to say. Heat suffused her cheeks. That Lauren enjoyed seeing her blush only made her burn hotter. You know I do. Do you? You turned me down. I wanted, Emma paused and thought, more. Tell me what you wanted. Emma closed her eyes again, like maybe that would make the question go away. She pressed her lips together to stop them from trembling. Lauren was up in her personal space now, expecting her to say something sexy about how she wanted to be teased or seduced. Nothing could be further from the truth. The truth was as sexy as taxes in April and just as real. I wanted you to ask me out. She was the biggest loser in the history of losers. Wherever losers hung out, she should go there to make them all feel better about themselves, because no one was more of a freak than her. Oh, Lauren said, like asking Emma out on a date instead of asking her to bed hadn't even crossed her mind. And that was the point, wasn't it? Asking her out really hadn't occurred to Lauren. She'd seen a nice face and available body, and she'd wanted a good time. An hour or two of forgetting about her own problems. Emma wanted sex, but she also wanted Lauren. Lauren ran a hand through her hair. God, I'm a complete ass, aren't I? You'd hardly be the first person to try to pick someone up in a bar, Emma shrugged. Lauren shook her head. You're not just some person. You don't even know me. You keep saying that. What is it that I don't know? Lauren asked. Nothing. Everything, Emma thought. It doesn't matter. Emma stepped back and let go of Lauren's hand. Lauren didn't push, but she stared into Emma's eyes in a way that made her certain Lauren had X-ray vision and could see inside her head, into all the dark places and dusty corners no one else knew existed, let alone had any interest in. Why do you end up regretting the way you feel? Lauren asked instead. Because the people I want never want me back. Lauren kissed her. It was so fast, Emma would have thought she'd imagined it if Lauren's mouth hadn't been so close to hers. I want you back. Lauren brushed her lips against Emma's. I want you so much. Emma couldn't help the tiny whimper that escaped when Lauren's mouth moved over hers. The moment was perfect. Every moment that wasn't this moment was administered an instant inferiority complex, a grade B report card, a token participation trophy. She tried and failed to ignore the tingle in her lips and the intensity in Lauren's eyes. Every inch of her body ached to be touching Lauren or be touched by her. When Lauren stroked her tongue against Emma's, her dignity rolled over and showed its belly, surrendering to Lauren's hot assault. The fight wasn't even remotely fair, and if things went any further, she'd get played again. She was trying hard to care about that, but her worries were fading, obliterated by how fucking turned on she was. But the dare, no, it was an excuse to talk to you. And when I did, nothing else mattered, Lauren said. Emma made a sound, kind of like a groan or kind of like a sob, so embarrassingly needy. Unable to stop herself, she melted against Lauren, her brain issuing frantic orders for damage control while her body smoothly staged a coup. Temptation was a heartless bitch, flaunting herself mercilessly, making Emma want when things were only going to end in suffering. But right now, there was just Lauren. Lauren's lips on hers, Lauren's hands in her hair, pulling at the elastic of her ponytail, Lauren's body all taut and trim and so very close. No bar full of people to keep them in check. Pain shot up her shoulder as they fell against the bookcase behind her, but she didn't care. 1 second, Lauren's mouth was soft on hers, and the next she was everywhere all at once, like she turned the dial from tender romance to erotic onslaught. She sank her hands into Emma's hair and held her still, kissing her with a ferocity that should have scared Emma but excited her instead. It was too hard, too forceful, too overwhelming for a first kiss, for any kiss. She went molten. There had to be something wrong with her, that being trapped against a bookcase, having her body positioned, her mouth plundered, would make everything inside her clench into a fist of need. She was probably doing a terrible job of kissing Lauren back. She could barely keep her feet under her, let alone concentrate on her technique. But Lauren didn't seem to mind. She pressed her body along Emma's, using the tight space to her advantage, closing her in. "Don't you dare believe I don't want you," Lauren whispered against her lips, her hands moving to Emma's hips, fitting their bodies together. "I don't want to be some notch on your bedpost," Emma said. Lauren brushed the hair out of Emma's eyes. "What do you want to be then?" She thought about it. Not easy to do with Lauren crowding her, Lauren's fingers in her hair, Lauren's gaze so direct she had to look away so her throat would work. "I want dinner first." Lauren frowned. "You're hungry?" "No. Tomorrow I want dinner before sex. Not a date exactly, but not a casual fuck either. I want filet mignon, an interesting conversation, and possibly candlelight." "You want a date that's not a date." Lauren's forehead wrinkled. Emma rolled her eyes. "Do you do anything but one night stands? I want to matter enough to have dinner with." Lauren smiled slowly. "You want me to work for it?" "Well, if it's work, then forget it." She made to duck under Lauren's arm, but wasn't fast enough. Lauren's mouth covered hers like the seal on a promise. "Emma," Lauren murmured against her lips, "would you by chance be free for dinner tomorrow night?" "I'll check my calendar," she said before sinking into the kiss.
Very nice.
Thanks.
That is awesome. You are good at the sexy scenes, Sandy. And I love that you read them. You're so good at reading them. You really
Thanks.
are. You really are. Well, and I've seen you like from the beginning. I remember when you read your first stuff and your voice was all shaky and your papers.
Oh, you remember when I sucked. Thanks. Thanks so much for pointing that out.
I love listening to you read now. It's great.
That means a lot to me coming from you because I think you write the best kisses in lesfic.
Well, thank you. I
Gotta say.
appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. I just don't read them out loud. My name is Georgia Beers. For those of you who don't know, I have written traditional contemporary romance for a very long time now. And I know that Christmas is over, but I'm going to read to you from my Christmas novella because I want to stretch Christmas out a little bit longer. And we're in a pandemic, and so why not? I mean, we can kind of do what we want to do. So this scene, I'm going to read to you from the second chapter in the book. And what has happened so far is our main character is Sasha Wolf, and Sasha has told her mother, Sasha has been telling her mother and her sisters for several months now that she has a girlfriend. She does not. But she has described her and has basically talked up this fake girlfriend, and her sister finally called her on it and dared her to bring her girlfriend home because her sister does not believe her. Sasha, of course, said, all right, fine, I'll bring my girlfriend home. That's fine. Now she has to find somebody. But also on that same day, in her apartment building, she met her next door neighbor, who is a drama teacher whose ex has been living with her and has maxed out all of her credit cards and now run far away. And this drama teacher, whose name is Kennedy, is left with bills to pay and rent to pay and not a lot of options. And they meet in the hallway, and it's just a fleeting meeting. And then we go to Sasha's office. So this is where we are now. Sasha has gotten herself into a boatload of trouble and isn't sure what she's going to do. So she's gone to her office where a couple of her friends are. And if you have read 16 Steps to Forever, then you know who all of these people are. And if you haven't, that's okay, because I'm going to read it to you. So here we go. You did what? Brooke's pretty eyes went so wide it was comical. I waved a dismissive hand at her. I don't even want to talk to you about it. I need your girlfriend. Where is she? Brooke tried to smother another grin, but I saw it. She just pulled in. She is not going to believe this. She'll be able to help me. Really? Is she a magician and she's just never mentioned it? Brooke didn't bother to hide the grin this time. Can she craft human beings out of thin air? You're enjoying this, I accused. Brooke held her finger and thumb a scant few millimeters apart. A little bit. Before I could think of a snarky yet not too snarky retort, Brooke's girlfriend, Macy Carr, burst into the office the same way she entered any place, like a gust of wind, breathless, surprising, and grabbing all the focus. She immediately dropped her purse on the floor, spilling it all over my office. As she picked it and its contents up, she asked, "What is it? What's going on? Tell me. Brooke said you did something crazy and I would never believe it." She made up a girlfriend, Brooke said before I could open my mouth. Oh yeah, Miss Stoic and Orderly was totally enjoying this. She what? Macy furrowed her brow as she looked from Brooke to me and back again. And not only did she make up a girlfriend, she promised to bring said made-up girlfriend home to her mother's for Christmas. Macy's mouth formed a perfect O as she dropped into a nearby chair, as if her surprise made her legs turn to jelly, and she stared at me in what was very obvious disbelief. I know, I said loudly, feeling the weight of what I'd done as it settled on me fully. It's just, my sister was being her usual, always right self, and she pushed my buttons, and I couldn't let her win, and why not? What are you, 12? Brooke asked. I dropped my head to the desk for the 27th time that evening. Thank God it was after 7 and the office was empty except for us. I know, I said again and lifted my head back up. I'm going to have to tell them. And God, she is never going to let me live it down, ever. Or, Macy said, and when I turned my attention to her, I recognized that expression immediately. Creativity, spark. Macy had an idea. Or, I asked, ignoring Brooke, who was already shaking her head. No, Brooke said, pointing at Macy, don't. Macy's grin grew wider. It wasn't like Brooke could stop her once she was onto something, and she was definitely onto something. Or you bring your girlfriend home to your mother's for Christmas. I blinked at her. Brooke mirrored my blink before explaining, honey, there's no girlfriend. The girlfriend does not exist. Not yet, she doesn't. Macy looked at me, and I swear to God, I'd never before seen a real live twinkle in somebody's eyes. But there was one in Macy's as she stood up and began to pace my office. You need to list everything you told your family about her. As she spoke, she ticked off one finger at a time. You'd have to set the parameters, be very specific with your dates and times so you don't get stuck ill-prepared. Brooke snorted. Too late. Macy whirled a finger up. She was on a roll. I recognized the spark. It was the same one she got when she had an idea for a design. Think about it. Think about how much crap your sister will have to eat if you actually bring home a girlfriend. And not just any girlfriend, the girlfriend you've been talking about for... She looked to me with a question in her eyes. I clenched my teeth and made a face as I ground out. 6 months? Brooke's laugh was like a gunshot blasting through the empty office and making me jump in my chair. 6 months? You've been faking a girlfriend for 6 months? Are you freaking kidding me? I dropped my head back to the desk, thinking I should just live there, really. It was a good place, suitable for banging my head whenever necessary, which was always, apparently. No, Macy said, and her confident tone had me looking up, and Brooke slowly swiveling her face to her. We can do this. It's we now, Brooke asked, eyes wide. The hardest part will be finding somebody to play the role. I'm sure that won't be hard at all. Brooke punctuated that with an eye roll. I mean, you need a professional, somebody who's getting paid. Macy was walking around the office again, thinking out loud. She turned to me, you can pay, right? I nodded. She'd sucked me right into this plan. I knew it was ridiculous and highly unlikely to ever come to fruition, but I was at least going to hear her out. I can, sure. She'd have to be willing and able, somebody who looks like your type, since we're talking about your family. Macy was almost talking to herself at this point, walking and formulating a plan while we watched her and twiddled our thumbs. I glanced at Brooke, who shrugged, shook her head, and sat back, knowing her protests were ineffective. She'd need to memorize all the details she can remember: job, family, likes and dislikes, and not just for her, not just the stuff you've told your family, but for you. I mean, if she's supposed to be your girlfriend, she'd obviously know things about you. I mean, it would be almost like we would give her a script, right? That's when she turned her face to me, finally snapped her fingers and said, you need somebody who can act. I mean, it would help if she was gay or bi, but it's not absolutely necessary. Most importantly, you need someone who can act. That's when the light bulb went on over my head. I needed somebody to play a role, preferably somebody who needed money and had some kind of acting experience. And who did I know who ticked all those boxes? I'm sure you can see where this is going. The end. Not really, but kind of the end.
Excellent. Very good.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions in the Q&A box. So let's ask those because we've got a little bit of time left. How did each of you get started in writing? Let's start there. So Joy, how did you get started in writing?
I had a friend that I used to do artwork with, and just in the course of our conversations, I would tell her, just life stories animated, and she said to me, you should write. And totally straight woman, had no intention of me writing lesbian romance, but I actually liked somebody else's books. Her name is Georgia Beers. You might have heard of her.
Never heard of her.
Yeah, so it's like, I think I'm gonna give this a try. And I started out with self-publishing and had some success with that, and then went to Bold Strokes, and I'm very happy there. So yeah, it was all my friend Chris's idea.
The rest is history.
It is.
David, what about you? How'd you get started?
Oh, I got started when I was just a wee little child, like eons ago. I was a very lonely child. We moved around a lot. I didn't have a lot of friends. I kind of hung out by myself at school, and I started writing journals. And at one time, I got a class assignment to write about something that happened. And I wrote about a time that I mistook my sister, forgive me sisters, mistook my sister's pimple cream for toothpaste. And I read that aloud in class, and it got a huge laugh. And, wow, this is like how I can get acceptance. It's like I can write and make people laugh and make people happy. And so I just kept writing. And I was also a huge fan of old movies and Agatha Christie in the 30s and 40s, obviously. So I thought, I think that would be kind of fun to do something like that, and also put a little humor in there as much as I can. So that's
very cool.
That's how I got started.
So David, I have a question for you. Is that your visual of what Heath would look like, or is that just a guy on a cover? He's like crazy handsome.
I know, right? I love this cover. I actually envision this gentleman as the gentleman that Heath falls in love with.
Oh, okay. Good enough. That works. Because I'm thinking of switching teams for that guy. Ooh, holy cow. Like I'm listening to you, but I'm like looking at this guy. I'm like, wow, those cheekbones and the jawline. And
I don't know where they
I swear I'm gay. I swear. Sandy, how did you get started in writing?
Oh gosh. So you all likely know I am better known as the senior editor of Bold Strokes Books. And I read a lot of books for my job. And at some point along the way, I had a thought that I could write something like this. Like it didn't seem, all that difficult. I could write it, and then I tried, and I was terrible for a really long time.
I don't believe that.
I remember, this is funny, I remember a conversation I had with the Rad, one of the earliest conversations that I had about something I wanted to write. And I said, I'm either gonna write YA or erotica. And Rad's like, you should pick one. Just pick one of those and stick to it, because those markets, different markets.
Yeah, they don't really cross over, do they?
Just a strange girl, but okay. So I just kind of, because of my job and this industry and this community, I became interested in writing my own stories, and worked at it for a while before I published anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how it happened. I do remember the first story I ever published was erotica. And Rad was the very first person to ever read it. And she read it and she looked at me and she said, if you publish this, people are going to know that you've had sex. Okay. That's okay.
That is funny.
So I just remember that. It was really cute. Every now and then I'm like, people might know that I've had sex. I published this book. Maybe I shouldn't. I don't know. Tough call.
That's hilarious. I have been writing for as long as I can remember. I've said this before. My mother has a second grade report card of mine that says two things. It says Georgia likes to tell stories, and it says that Georgia spells above her grade level. So I was always writing. But the first time I tried my hand at lesfic, I should say women loving women, I had read a book that I hated. I don't remember what it was or who it was. This was years ago. I read the whole book. It was awful. I threw it down and I said to my partner at the time, that was terrible. I could have done a better job. And she said, and she was great, she's like, so what's the difference between you and that author? And I said, she wrote a book. And she's like, yes. And so I took that as a challenge, and I sat down and I wrote a book. I wrote Turning the Page, and I sent it in, and I was lucky enough, my timing was good because I was lucky enough to hit the WLW market as a lot of new publishers and presses were just starting up. So I kind of got in on the ground floor. And then I haven't stopped since. It's been 20 years. My first book was published in 2001, which is alarming. No, 2000, which is frightening to me. But yeah, I've never looked back. It's never something that I thought of as a career until that first book was published. And then I was like, hey, this is a kind of a cool job. I'd like to do this. And I just stuck with it until I was doing well enough to write full time. And that's what I do now. This is my job. I am a romance writer, and it's pretty cool, I gotta say. Let's see, we're getting some good questions in here. How do you think the world is progressing in having LGBT books more available and more visible? And Sandy, let's start with you there, since you're kind of in the business.
Yeah, sure. I think ebooks and self-publishing, both kind of and at different times and in different ways, have completely changed LGBTQ plus publishing.
Mm-hmm.
Before ebooks, the majority of books were sold through independent bookstores, through gay bookstores, some online, but ebooks really changed the market because of international accessibility, because they are more private than print books for people who are not out, for instance, who don't want a particular kind of book on their bookshelf. And so in terms of accessibility, I think ebooks made a huge difference. We are seeing similar change in terms of audiobooks right now, which is the kind of the evolving format, becoming more and more popular. So that's fun. And then of course, the indie market, self-publishing market really boosted the range of books. And I think a lot more books in a lot more niche interest areas. So you get lots of books, say, about polyamory, or perhaps some genre pairings that you may not see commonly from publishers that may have a much smaller market, but are there for those readers that want them.
Right.
So
we were just talking about this in another panel a little earlier about, and I'm thinking about it now because I'm thinking, you know, when I was first out and first looking for stuff to read, there wasn't a lot available, and I'm dating myself a little bit, but you know, there were maybe, you know, half a dozen to a dozen new books a month. And just in that span of time, and 20 years is not a long period of time, it has exploded. And as you said, Sandy, with e-reader or the ebooks and self-publishing, there is so much. And now you can literally go on and look for, you know what, I want to read something with a bisexual main character. Or, you know, I feel like I need a person of color lead. And you can find all that stuff now. It's all broken down. And 20 years ago, it was, here's your 12 and you get what you get. And, you know, have fun with those and you're done with them. And then you got to wait. And now it's just, it's, in 20 years, it has exploded, and I'm in awe of how much is out there now, really.
Yeah, it's true. And the internet makes it really easy to search for like keywords or whatnot, so you can find exactly what you're looking for, which is neat.
Yeah. I think we can squeak this one question in. We've got a couple minutes left, so we'll let Joy and David start with this one. The question is, I know Dave's book is a prequel, and I know other books have recurring characters, and I'm wondering how you keep track of your characters. Are they fully formed, including backstories in your head when you first start writing about them? Joy, how about you? You take that first.
My characters are not fully formed. I fly by the seat of my pants. I start with a general idea of who they are. Sometimes I don't even know what they do for a living. I know that you start, when you start your books, your characters, you start with a career. Sometimes I don't even know until we start into dialogue, and that kind of leads me to where they need to work and what they need to do. Most of my characters, I try to give them a good sense of humor, like the smartass that, you know, that Hope is in that book. No, they're definitely not fully formed. And I keep track of them by, I put at the top of my manuscript, I have their descriptions. I have to make sure I keep track of what color their eyes are and their hair, how long their hair is. If I don't write it down, I don't remember. So yeah, they're definitely not fully formed. I get to know them as I'm writing it.
Yeah, yeah. David, what about you?
For me, it's a little bit different because I write a series. So a lot of the books do carry over from one book to the other. So
Do you have a Bible? Do you have a series Bible?
You know, it's, some of it's up here and some of it's written down, and I do have biographies for every single character. New characters that come along, are they formed before I start to write? Yes and no. Sometimes they will change. They'll change age, they'll change sex, they'll change all different kinds of things. But I usually at least have a good idea going into it. And then the recurring characters, which this Sunday, Bold Strokes Books, 2:00 Phoenix time, is having secondary characters we love. So
yes, I'm on that panel too. That's going to be a good one.
It will be really good. I'm excited about that. And also, I'm kind of glad, well, going back to the other question, as far as how it's changed over the years, you know, I'm at that age where I was when I was a kid, it was pre-internet, and I remember sneaking into an adult bookstore at 17 with a fake ID. And I got busted. I got thrown out, but you know.
Okay, so we're out of time. Do we want to quickly run through and tell us what your current book is that's available? Joy.
Carrie and Hope, well, it's available. No Regrets is available right now. It
Okay,
came out
and then your next book is Carrie and Hope, which comes out when?
in February.
Okay, and David, what do we have available, and what's the next one coming out?
Available is the first 5 in the series, Heath Barrington Murder Mystery Series, and the next one is Death's Prelude, and that will be out in February.
Awesome. Sandy?
Currently out is If You Dare. I'm working on a book called The Naked Truth, but I didn't schedule it because I always miss my deadline. Don't tell anyone. So I have no idea. Whenever it's done.
Awesome. And then I have available 16 Steps to Forever right now. And in April comes The Secret Poet. And you guys have been great. And the audience has been awesome. Thank you for your great questions. I really appreciate it.
Thank
Good night,
you.
guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.